What should we do with our mindset psychologically as we prepare for and compete in a marathon? And then also, what do we do after? First, let's take a look at what we can do pre-race. As we go through those months of preparation, there's a lot that can be done that has us mentally prepared for race day. And I'd like to give an example of Connor and Clayton as they were getting ready for the Olympics, what they did day to day that helped them emotionally, mentally, along with the physical work that they were doing. Connor and Clayton were both very intentional in making decisions of what they needed to do each day to be as prepared as possible. For example, after a workout and weights, there was time in the sauna. There was a lot of nutritional consideration going into the recovery. There was time in the training room, making sure they were maintaining good health and fitness, along with taking care of any aches and pains that were a natural part of the kind of training that was going on as they did all they could to be as ready for those hills and heat and humidity in Paris. When you're really prepared physically, then that is going to be a great benefit emotionally and mentally. So having the psychology of a winning attitude on race day, a lot of it comes down to what you've done in the build-up, making sure that you've done all you can to be really ready for that day. There are a lot of times in training where we're really struggling near the end of a workout. Maybe it's an 8-mile marathon pace run, and those can be tough to finish. So the last couple of miles, making sure you dig down and really push through can let you know that on race day, you'll also be able to handle it. Now, if it's the point where physically you're not capable of finishing that workout the way you'd like to, perhaps it's just a bad day, and that can be okay. Perhaps the pace that you've chosen is really not the right pace for the current fitness. This is where it's really nice to have a coach to help with some of that guidance and the discussions that are needed. But what you do in the workouts emotionally can also really impact your ability on race day to really feel good about your abilities to complete. As you get close to race day, there's a tool that I'd like you to use that would help you get some sleep the night before the race, or if you do wake up the night before, at least you might get to sleep a little bit quicker. I'll leave a link in the description for you to download an example of this, but it's just a list of questions that every time I do a marathon, I rewrite those responses specific to how that training build went and what's going on in my life at that time. So here's a list of the questions. This is what my current one looks like for a race that I've got next week. The questions that are included are: fill in your top 3 workouts in the last 2 months. What is your equipment on race day that will help you run well? I'm mostly thinking of footwear there, but there could be some other ideas brought in. Who wants you to do well? It's nice to have the motivation of family, friends, anyone that might be involved in hoping that you have a good day. What will you do for nutrition the day before the race? What will you do for nutrition on race day? What's your pacing strategy? What will you do for effective sleep the week of the race? Why do I care about the outcome of this race? And list other reasons that you will have a successful day. There's a lot of different thoughts in all of that. Some of it more mechanical, or the technicalities of what you're going to do on a specific day. That helps you have everything in order to calm your nerves of, okay, I've got my nutrition planned out. I've got my race kit ready to go in the right place. Everything's right where I need it in the morning. So all those kind of things are included to help you not worry about the things that you might tend to have concerns with, or that might wake you up at night and think, oh, did I leave that gel wherever it needed to be, or whatever it might be. There's also the motivations of people around you that are helping. Just knowing they're there caring for you may be what you need to get you through one of those hard miles near the end. The other part of this is to remind you of what you've accomplished in your preparation, focusing just on the positive days. There's negative or tough days that come along in, I think, almost any marathon build, and those can be thrown out and ignored. Weird things come up. There might have been an illness, or there might have been something nutritionally wrong one day, or a bad night's sleep that caused some issues with a workout not going so well. But there'll be a lot of good positive workouts along the way also, which you need to focus on and remind yourself of. So I usually read that just a little few minutes before I head off to bed, And I still wake up a lot in the night before a major race. But I tend to fall back asleep quicker if I know everything's in place, there's only positive thoughts in my head, and people that are there caring and wanting this to go well. And I tend to be calmer and able to get back to sleep a bit quicker that way. A few years ago, I was on the start line at the St. George Marathon, and someone looked at my wrist, and I had a band around it that a lot of people had similar looking ones that showed their splits for each mile or 5K, so they could check what they needed to be doing throughout the race. And someone looked down at mine and said, "Oh, what's your pace today?" And indicating they were wondering about my wristband. And I said, "Well, actually, it's not my splits, it's names of people. So this is my one for my upcoming race. And I just have some training partners, some family members. Each mile mark along the way has the name of a person for me to sort of dedicate that mile to. And as I go through, whether they realize they're on this list or not, it has me thinking about someone that I'm connected with that had some impact on me wanting to perform well that day. So there's another thing that may be of some benefit to you, where it helps you mile by mile to be thinking of the people around you that have some kind of investment in your life and that you appreciate. Some of them might not even be around anymore. My father's on there, who passed away quite a few years ago, and he's always my 26th mile. So yeah, that can be a real benefit, having the thoughts going through your mind of people that you're doing this with or for, and you have a little reminder on your wrist of who each mile is going to be for. Now, when we get to the race morning, there's an importance on making sure we don't get overworked too early on. So heading to the start line or start area, getting ready, we just want to be in a relaxed state of mind where it's just like another training day, just like any other that we've done over and over for the last few weeks, months, years, whatever it might be for you. There'll be a short warm-up. Depending on what your goals are and how you've prepared and so on, you might have a warm-up, you might just start the race. But our training group, typical is to do a few minutes of running, a couple of strides at race pace, and that makes it so the first mile is a little easier to run the pace that you've set as a goal. Now, but we're not fatigued from what we've done to that point. Emotionally, I like to just be visiting with training partners or whoever's there that isn't off in their own world being so focused. And that goes on until about, for me, around 45 minutes before the race. Then I like to just lay on the ground or sit in a chair, legs up, whatever opportunities are there, and just be thinking over what's the plan for the day, going through that sheet that I made with the responses to questions, making sure I have good confidence as I get ready for the start. Then I do my warm-up, and then I'm kind of in my own zone and not really interacting much with other people. But I'm also not very focused on exactly how I'm feeling and what's going on around me. I'm just aware enough to make sure I'm on the start line at the right time. And when we start running, I'm just going out like it's another long run on a Saturday. Now, we do need to care about what pace we're running and how we're feeling, but it's a different kind of feeling at the beginning of the race compared to the end. The psychologist that I worked with called it being dissociated until progressing like a funnel towards near the end of the race, where we're in this very associative state of mind, where we're very focused on exactly what we need to be doing at that moment to get to the finish line in the shortest time possible. If we get too worked up early on, then we often make some pacing mistakes, thinking, oh, I feel great, I'm going to go extra hard. And that can be a real mistake in an event like the marathon. So start very relaxed, relatively relaxed, I'll say, and then you gradually guide that focus more and more as you progress towards those final stages of the race. There's something a lot of people like to describe as hitting the wall in a marathon. There's been races where I don't think I've really hit that, but it was I describe it as exponentially hard to maintain the pace that I'm doing, but somehow we're able to get to that finish line, and even though we're completely exhausted, we never really died off on pace. That's what we're shooting for. If we're going for a great performance time for you, then you want to end in a way that you feel I cannot keep going at this pace, but you weren't really dying off and losing the ability to maintain that either. Now, overcoming the role psychologically can be extra challenging because it's not just a psychological event going on. It's largely physical. It could be a nutritional thing. It could be the wrong pace was chosen and you're just not capable of running that speed for that long. So there could be some physical things going on that really are going to limit you. But if you look at that wristband and think of whoever you might have in those last few miles, you can get a little extra motivation. You can use the people around you to try to get everything you can out of the day that's available. There's always a way that we can get a little bit more. You might notice in a workout, if someone joins in to help pace on one of the intervals, somehow that interval becomes a little bit easier, or your ability to get the time that you were shooting for just happens. So there's a lot that can go on psychologically that can help, but realizing if there is a physical limitation because of some kind of mistake or weakness in training that's going to physically limit you, you can still get all that's available out of the situation you're in and use the motivations that you have to accomplish that. Once the race is over, the sports psychology does not end. Even though the very first time I did a marathon, I had zero plans of ever doing one ever again, but that changed. It took 2 years, but I did continue doing them later. But either way, there should still be some time for reflection so that you can work on improving for yourself the next time, or to learn and be able to share some thoughts with others that might help them as they start going through some of the same things. So the very first marathon I did, I crossed the line and had some disappointment in at least one aspect of what had gone on that day. But thinking back to what our sports psychologist here teaches us, we're supposed to take 3 positives and 1 thing that we're going to work on better for next time. So I looked back and thought, well, I can easily find the things I'm going to work on better next time. But as I pondered over it, there were some positives from the day. I realized that I did choose the right pace generally and was able to stick to that race plan the way I'd really wanted to. I started at the right pace without getting too excited and going too quick and spending energy for what I would have needed at the end of the race. And finally, I did feel like through the final 10K, even though it was my first marathon, I was able to keep pressing and pushing and digging down to get what I could out of those last few miles, and ended up with a time that I really was quite happy with. The main idea that I wanted to work on for next time ended up just being a physical thing. It wasn't a mental or pacing mistake or anything. I was so worried about getting dehydrated that I overdid the drinking early on and ended up with this side stitch for about 5 miles. I remember it was miles 7 to 12. I was just hurting and bending over a little and wasn't quite doing the pace that I wanted because it just hurt too much. And then right at mile 12, I let out this big burp, and then everything was relieved and I was back on pace and things were good again. And I kept drinking, but not overdoing it, which is usually hard to do in a marathon. But since I started so hydrated, then that first aid station where I was getting my bottles, I had more than I needed in there and tried to finish the whole thing. And that was actually a mistake that day. So then I had things to consider for the next time and left with more of the positive thoughts rather than negatives, which adds for the confidence the next time we go into a race day. Hope some of those ideas are going to end up being useful for you. If you have any follow-up questions or anything, go ahead and put those in the comments and I'll try to respond as well as I can. Good luck for your next race.